Hey everybody, this is Ray Fluck, television beat writer for Bleeding Cool. Welcome you back once again to our weekly recap of The Walking Dead Season 8. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Season 8, Episode 12, The Key. Spoiler, I'm going to be talking about this from two different perspectives. The serious fanboy perspective, because from that perspective, this was just an awesome episode. And from the perspective of just how it kind of fits into the season and did it move any storylines forward, which it also did. I'm going to say right from the start, a vast improvement from last week's episode. I think from the way the season's been looking so far, I thought the mid-season premiere was it was okay and solid. Episode 9, episode 10. Episode 10 was just amazing. You know how I feel about last week, so I'm going to stop beating a dead horse. But tonight's episode just hit on a whole bunch of cylinders. Like I said, it gave you just a lot of good fanboy stuff and fangirl stuff, but also gave you a lot of really cool stuff from a storyline standpoint. And some really interesting things to look at moving not just through the remainder of this season, but as we look forward to Season 9 that I think could possibly address some of the concerns some people have had about the storyline and how the show's been progressing. But I'll get to that in a second. We're going to start with two of the secondary storylines and then get to the main storyline. First storyline has to do with Enid, Maggie, and Michonne at the Hilltop. Maggie sees what is a crate with a little flag and a message off in the distance. So of course they go out to see it, and it is an offer from someone that if you give us essentially 4 crates of LPs, we'll give you the key to your future. Now, of course, Maggie and Enid being a very paranoid and hesitant with everything going on the Hilltop, they're not too excited to go about checking it out. Michonne, on the other hand, is like, I'm going to check this out because, good things have happened in the past. Why not pass this up? Why take a chance? So, of course, with Michonne, Enid and Maggie aren't going to let her go alone, so they decide to all come up, meet up together, and find out what's going on. And interestingly enough, we start to meet some new characters that I'm really, really hoping. I'm hoping we don't see them anymore for this season. I know it sounds weird, but I'm hoping this is a harbinger of really cool stuff for Season 9. Georgie, Hildy, and Midge. Georgie especially, and she's the actress is actually a guest on Talking Dead tonight. I'm fascinated by these characters just in what we've seen in this episode. They are the personification of hope. They are bartering information, education, and knowledge for the sake of LPs, and it's very funny. We learned from Georgie right up front, and none of that spoken word stuff either. She wants music, and it turns out, interestingly enough, that they really have something to offer. Now, Maggie and Enid, of course, are very hesitant about this, so they take them back to the Hilltop, and Maggie's plan is like, look, we're just going to keep them here, we're going to take their stuff, and this is because we need them, and everything's going to go on. And Enid, who's really dealing with the whole ramifications of Carl's death, is just so pro Maggie on this one. She's just like, yes, this is what we're going to do, this makes perfect sense, we're going to go this route. And there's a moment where she kind of, in her anger and frustration and hurt, kind of steps to Michonne a little bit. And I'm glad Michonne, in a very direct manner, kind of shut that crap down, to kind of quote Negan for a second. Because honestly, Enid would have just gotten torn apart and not a single bead of sweat would have gone onto Michonne's head. So kind of glad that got taken care of. But Michonne explains to them, like, look, we need to start thinking beyond what we're fighting and who we need to fight and who we need to kill. That if Carl's memory is going to mean anything, is we got to think beyond the fight. Yeah, fight, absolutely. And when the saviors come, we're going to fight tooth and nail. But what do we have waiting for us afterwards? What is going to be made of society? So Maggie decides to make the deal. She comes out with the first crate of LPs, and Georgie and Hildy and Midge, they're really surprised and appreciative. In fact, to the point where Georgie is like, look, I'm going to make an investment in you guys just to show you what this is all about. Just give me a crate of LPs, that's fine. You don't owe me anything else, and I'm going to give you a large chunk of the food rations that I have. And the reason why, what Georgie and Hildy and Midge represent is something that all of them have forgotten about. That there is the possibility for something better. That there is something that can come out of all this nonsense and all this mess. It was such a nice relief. It was a great harbinger of what to expect for Season 9, because it really feels like when I tell you what the key is that she was offering, why it offers a lot of potential for Season 9. The key is a guidebook, essentially, of how to do windmills, aqueducts, how to essentially rebuild the basics of society. Everything Maggie could ever want for the Hilltop and all the surrounding regions. So you understand that this bartering for knowledge is priceless. It's funny how Georgie talks about how it's on her head, but she does make a fact like, well, I do write it down and sometimes, photocopy it. So it just was an amazing storyline that was just like, hey guys, we know this is dark, we know this is dreary, but there's some light at the end of this tunnel, so hold on. I just thought it was amazing. The acting performances across the board were just astounding. I apologize for not knowing Georgie, Hildy, or Midge's names yet, but I swear I'll be knowing them very, very soon. But Caitlin Nakin, Lauren Cohen, and Danae Guerrera were just fantastic. I just thought this... Again, this was a secondary storyline that could have served its own episode. So we go from there. Do we go to Dwight and Simon? What we have is a follow-up from last episode. Simon's now leading the Saviors out on a mission to scare the hell out of the Hilltop, to show them what their plan is with the whole zombie guts, scorched earth, we're going to taint all our weapons thing. The idea, essentially, wound a couple of them, let them see what it is they're facing. What's interesting is that Negan decides to accompany them, I guess, to kind of send a message. Now, Rick at this point has been doing some scoping out of around the Hilltop surrounding area, and he sees Negan, and this is his opportunity to go after him, and he takes Negan out hard. Major car crash, car accident hard. That, I feel, is the main storyline we're going to get to in a second. But Simon and Dwight, what gets interesting is that Simon is no longer hiding his disdain for Negan's decision-making. This whole idea about moving on from Rick and the rest of them and expanding the Savior idea much further is something he doesn't hesitate talking to Dwight about up front and asking Dwight, have you ever thought about taking the guy out and all of these things? And it's interesting because as much as they're going looking for Negan, Simon makes the argument to Dwight, you know what? What's the point? Honestly, we could just change things right now. We could save our people by not going after Negan and changing the plans and moving forward. And it's interesting that they decide to do that. And it's something Rick touches upon to Negan when we go into that in a second. But they go back to tell the troops. Now, where this gets interesting is I wasn't sure how to interpret this because it almost seems like at the end, Dwight's plan isn't so much to move on from Rick and the rest of them, that it seems like it's more, let's scorch earth Rick and the rest of them and just move on. And I'm not sure if that was the full understanding Dwight had, because that look on Dwight's face at the end, besides the scarring, just seems to have a lot of concern. That's the impression I got. It didn't seem like so much like, hey, let them have their own stuff, let's just move forward on this. It seemed like, no, we're going to treat them like we do the scavengers times 10, and then we're going to move forward. Again, amazing acting. I think Steve Ogg as Simon is just his wordplay, the way he presents the dialogue, I think is fantastic. Austin Amelia, I don't think gets enough credit for facial expressions and the way his ability to act in the quiet moments. Our last storyline, which is our main storyline, obviously is Rick and Negan. Now, Rick took Negan out hard. When you see the signs of the accident and everything like that, Negan got busted up big time. They end up escaping and making their way into a house where we see a huge breakdown. Huge fight. Everything back and forth. There's one point where Negan is essentially hanging from the stairwell, and Rick has an axe, and Negan literally drops down to the basement to avoid getting his fingers cut off. It's interesting because in the process, he ends up losing Lucille. And now we see this cat and mouse game going on in the basement where Negan's continuing just railing on Rick about, you couldn't save your son, you can't save your people, why are you doing all this stuff? We were just trying to save you, you could be working for me, but you're leading to all this nonsense. And it's interesting because he continues and then offers Rick a deal. We'll take this back, we'll take this back to how it was originally. You get Hilltop Kingdom, Alexandria, everything like that. No harm, no foul, we go back to how it was, and only 25% instead of 50%. 75% your people get to keep, we just move forward on this, total absolution. You get the sense of, A, that Negan's realizing this is taking on a lot bigger problem than it should, but also I think Negan's realizing we're losing too many people and too many resources in the process. That's where things get a little interesting, because as this is going along, the tide starts to turn. It helps that Rick finds Lucille, but Rick really then starts getting on Negan about like, you're saving all these people, you really don't care about them, and how much do your people really care about you? Where are your saviors? You've been gone for how long now? Nobody's come looking for you. Kind of interesting, isn't it? And then Rick, and then as Negan's making the argument for what they do in saving people, that's when Negan gets the revelation from Rick that, guess what? Your people didn't save the scavengers. You wholesale slaughtered them. And it was at that point that Negan realizes, I can't trust my people. I cannot believe that happened. I can't trust my people. And I'm literally finding out from a guy who's literally ready to kill me any second. So Negan's, I think, starting to get a much broader understanding of what's going on his people's side. Now, Rick, on the other hand, has got Lucille. And he just hits him with the whole, hey, you want a chance to kiss her goodbye, lights Lucille on fire and starts wailing away on her. Now, Negan, of course, flips out. There is a fight. Everything goes crazy. Negan gets his hands back on Lucille because we just know that parting wasn't going to happen anytime soon. And Rick is able to stumble his way out. Now, where it gets kind of interesting is towards the end because we don't know what happened to Negan. We see Rick making his way out, but we're not quite sure what happened until we see Negan slowly waking up in the passenger seat of a car as the camera pans around and we see the person who's driving is Jadis. And Negan wakes up and looks just as surprised as we are. Of course, thankfully, Jadis doesn't knock us unconscious with the gun like she does to Negan, which ends the episode in classic cliffhanger fashion. Now, I mean, do I need to say it? Andrew Lincoln, Jeffrey D. Morgan. The only thing better, I think, potentially than those two fighting one another is those scenes where they're both taking out walkers. You see the potential for leadership there, but you also see the potential for two big alpha male egos. You know they can't sustain. You know they can't be together. So, but again, overall, I just thought this was an incredibly effective episode. You had a flaming Lucille being used in battle. You had Rick and Negan going at each other for most of the episode. You had really great dialogue and exchanges between Dwight and Simon. The introduction of new characters in Georgie, Hildy, and Midge. Again, I loved seeing Enid and Maggie and Michonne. As much as Enid I thought was going to get the crap beaten out of her by Michonne, there's a toughness that we're starting to see to Caitlin Nakin's performance that I think is just fantastic. So, again, if I had to give this episode a rating, putting my fanboy stuff aside and being objective, kind of blending the two, I would give this episode so far this season around an 8.5. I just think it was strong, solid. If you were looking for just pure out visceral thrills, it was fantastic. There was even a Daryl-Rick bromance moment, which I thought was cool. But all in all, it just was a good, strong episode. Actually, one of those episodes where it's an hour and it felt like it went 25 minutes. Unlike last week, which was an hour and felt like it went 2. So, great episode. Looking forward to next week. Guys, thank you for joining me. We're going to be back next Sunday. We're going to be taking a look at the Season 8, Episode 13, Do Not Send Us Astray, which we can see is going to be a lot of Carol-centered stuff, too. But very interested. I'd like to start seeing more Ezekiel play in this, too, because Carrie Payton has kind of been off the radar for a bit. But thank you guys for joining me. This is Bleeding Cool's recap review of The Walking Dead Season 8. Again, taking a look at Episode 12, The Key. My name is Ray Flick, television beat writer. Glad to be here with you guys. A couple things coming up. Don't forget, Sunday, April 15th, we're going to be doing a doubleheader of the season finale of The Walking Dead and the season premiere, Season 4 of Fear the Walking Dead, and the first Morgan crossover officially. We're going to get a chance to see how that's going to work. So April 15th, we got something cool planned for that. But otherwise, guys, enjoy your Sunday night / Monday, depending on when this posts and you see it. And I will see you guys on bleedingcool.com. Take care, folks.